Welcome to your If Astrology Isn't Real minisode presented to you by Cosmic RX Radio, where I spill the tea on this week's headlines. Politics, pop culture, world events, all written in the stars. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to our first If Astrology Isn't Real dedicated mini-sode, all part of your Cosmic RX Radio experience. And as always, I am your guide, your host, your high vibe hype woman or hope woman, I hope, Maddie Murphy. How the hell are we doing? I'm so excited to have you here. If you've been around listening to this podcast for a minute, you know this is one of my favorite segments, and I totally bond with so many of you on social media where we just love to talk about, like, oh my God, that thing that happened in the news, that headline, that is so speaking directly to the astrology of the moment, right? And if you are new here, welcome. We're going to look at what happened in the week we just lived. So much happened. And we're going to see what's going on in, the current events and the chaos that can really correlate to what's happening in the movement of the planets, in the patterns, in the cycles we're seeing in the cosmos. So one, we can contextualize it more, understand it more, but also hope to learn something more about astrology, about ourselves, about our soul's missions here. And as always, use it to align with the highest frequency, right? That place of being really heart-centered, open. And that's one of the things that really made me fall in love with astrology, like again, as an adult, was how we can use these cycles of astrology to understand like what our lesson is in this moment in time. Because that's what astrology is. It's the study of patterns and cycles. So with that being said, this is what you can expect on these episodes. We're going to just do a little yapping, pretty cash, but I want to talk about like, what do we see going on in the political main stage? That could be here in the US where I'm based, but really anywhere in the world. And one thing from pop culture, celebs and people who are, in the zeitgeist. I'm not saying we're putting them any kind of pedestal, actually quite the opposite here. But celebrities are like a version of an archetype. They're on a bigger stage, and they can really show us like how the astrology is playing out and what we can learn from it. And I also love looking at people's birth charts to understand, oh, right, that's a good use of this planet in this sign, or this is how we can get into sticky situations or the more shadowy aspect of that. So that leads me into the third thing that we can expect from this episode is we're going to take a peek into someone's birth chart and do a little bit more of a cosmic deep dive. Check out, like, see what's some of that we can find from their chart. And again, how do we use that in our own lives, especially if you have similar placements? And then the last thing on these episodes is we might be doing a little bit light, like predictive work, like, okay, not like in a fortune telling way, but just like, ooh, I'm excited to see what happens with XYZ, or ooh, heads up, ABC is happening for the week ahead, if it feels right, if it feels aligned. So to recap, we're talking politics, pop culture, a peek in the birth chart, and maybe a light little like predictive RX in there. Okay, let's get into it. There's so many things to talk about as always. That's one thing my brain just goes like bonkers, especially like in this vortex of like news that is just coming in like rapid pace right now, which is also all about astrology because we are living in the age of air. We are in Pluto and Aquarius, Jupiter and Gemini. The information is coming in hot. So there we go. Starting off with the very meta, if astrology isn't real already. But I asked you, as I will do every week on the Cosmic RX Instagram, what do you want to talk about? It helps me sort of be like, let's ground into something. What are we all curious to look at? And I'm pulling it up here. Someone said it's so funny. A few of you asked about this. But someone says, UTF is up with a motherhood medal. This feels like something that we should talk about. So I guess current administration has been trying to ponder ways to get us to make more babies. And instead of, I don't know, subsidizing childcare, doing more research on things like maternal health and maternal mortality, or, making it easier to live here, to, buy a home, afford healthcare, groceries, or even just giving us better like maternity, paternity, family leave situation. They're like, I know, a medal. That's it. That we're going to do. If you have 6 children, we're going to give you a medal. And we're like, thanks. folks. And even the $5,000 baby bonus, it's just not going to cut it, right? And this is something we're going to definitely, it's going to be front of mind, big conversation, this whole like pro-natalism movement, as they're calling it, especially I imagine as we ramp up from June of this year to June of next year. And that is because Jupiter is moving into Cancer, and Cancer is the sign of, has to do with all things maternal, all things around the feminine, home, family, children. And so as Jupiter comes to expand, it's like Jupiter expands indiscriminately. Jupiter is a benefic planet, but when Jupiter expands something, it just like, brings it out. It really illuminates it in a way you can't ignore. And it's really up to us to decide. Like, we still have to have discernment around it. So again, these things might seem good on a headline. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you already like see through it, but we're really looking at like, is this helping anyone, or is it just giving like Gilead, like intro to Gilead? And with Jupiter in Cancer, we're probably also going to see some more things. We saw during Mars in Cancer retrograde, Mars in Cancer direct. Basically, we were in a Mars in Cancer moment from September up until April 18th. Cancer brings up things around identity, around like within a confine, like the identity we have within a family or identity we have within a nation. So Cancer can bring up a lot of nationalism, a lot of populism, a lot of xenophobia. And, we see during Mars and Cancer, a lot of people fighting for like what their idea of home and family is, whether that's doing things like, how do I say this? Doing some really messed up stuff with kicking people out of this country with no due process, with no dignity, or accusing drag brunches and certain books going to be like, the downfall for their children, while in the same breath trying to take away, the rights and identity of trans children, or again, not caring about gun protection laws. Like, it's just this like, and I think a lot of people in this country during Mars and Cancer were like, actually, we do want to fight for our country, but this is not it. Like, we want to fight for our country. We're embarrassed. Like, there is a really big thing happening right now. And I think it's actually made some people, Mars and Cancer, kind of like weirdly patriotic in this new way, this like patriotism 2.0. So I imagine under Jupiter and Cancer, we're going to see all of that play out even more. So I'm so curious. What do you all think of this? Let me know if you're watching on YouTube in the comments, or slide in my DMs at Cosmic RX. And let me know as you see things in the news if it feels like Jupiter and Cancer to you. I will talk about this more on the energy report, but Jupiter and Cancer is also going to bring some really magical things, of course, and especially for you on the personal level. I love Jupiter and Cancer, especially my water sign. So stay tuned to Cosmic RX Radio for more of that. Now, let's talk about pop culture. What went down this week in pop culture? Again, so many things happening left and right, hard to keep up, but I asked you all, what do you want to talk about? And truly, this has happened last week, but everyone still want to talk about like the failed feminist moment that was the all-female Blue Origin spaceflight crew. And I think this was so top of mind for everyone because we talk a lot about Pluto and Aquarius here. We could probably have our own segment on just like Pluto and Aquarius in the news, but we talked about Pluto and Aquarius is doing so many things. It's really coming to implode like a lot of these outdated systems that we got rid of during Pluto and Capricorn. And it's bringing everyone into a much more like hoping, community-based future where things are a little bit more inclusive, progressive. And of course, Pluto and Aquarius is very connected to air, to space, to the higher mind. So we're thinking about things like space travel. We're thinking about things like aliens, so to speak. And we're also looking at like the implosion of the opposite of Aquarius, which is Leo, which is celebrity culture, putting celebrities on a pedestal. We saw a lot of this go on this summer. Everything from like Diddy to like Blake Lively to just Aquarius things like the internet and like TikTok has just made it a very interesting place for like, we're not buying the fake, the curated, the bullshit, so to speak, from these things. Like 20 years ago, it might have been like, oh my God, it's amazing. So obviously, I'm sure unless you've been living under a rock, you saw that there was like the Blue Origin space flight had, let's see, who was on it? All I know is Gayle King and Katy Perry. And there's a few other people on there. And I guess it was like funded by Bezos. So it has all the things you'd expect with Pluto and Aquarius, right? It has space, it has celebrities, it has billionaires. And I think it was supposed to be this PR stunt for like, yay, feminism. But it ended up just being this thing with like making people really angry. And like, how could you be so out of touch that people right now can't afford healthcare? They can't afford groceries. There's this money of going to this flight could have been used for anything really better, right? Like clean water initiatives, things instead of like burning through all of this fuel and resources. Like, could we put that money to something else? Even if not, even if we're not entitled to tell people how to spend their money, even though like billionaires should be taxed more aside, there should be a moment of like, do we need to like make this whole big like PR moment about this like publicity thing? Like it's so transparent. It's like rice paper, right? And then, of course, Katy Perry had all this backlash, and she was like, I regret going. And like Gayle King, they just kept making things worse. I think Gayle King has that quote of like, everyone's like, well, criticizing her. And she's like, well, have you ever been? Have you ever? It's like, no, Gayle, we haven't been. Like, most people can't even afford to take like a road trip right now with their family. You think, what? I'm just like, what in the Delulu, what in the celebrity billionaire culture is actually happening? And I think that like, so actress Jessica Chastain said the Blue Origin flight showcased the utter defeat of American feminism. Olivia Munn called them out. And I think that like there's just other things that are more important in the world. And that is very Pluto and Aquarius. Again, any of you like millennial like me, millennium, what are we called? Millennials? If this is stunt was like put together in 2002, we'd be like, oh my God, girl power. And also we'd like be criticizing like who wore it best and like who looked fat in their spacesuit. And all shit that was just so toxic and fake. And nowadays we're just like, yeah, no, not having it. So it just felt very Pluto and Aquarius. Again, I'm curious to hear what you guys think of that. And again, just let me know as you come up and come across Pluto and Aquarius things. Always let me know. They're happening left and right nowadays. But it's so cool to just really see what's happening in the news that helps us really understand what this moment in time is. And remember, we're just getting started. We're going to be in Pluto and Aquarius until 2044. Okay, so now let's look at a peek in someone's birth chart. I wanted to break down and talk about this week. We had the passing of Pope Francis, and I don't normally love doing like charts of people's passings, but this one felt big. This felt like a moment in time. Again, it feels like a cultural watershed moment. It also happened during some very significant astrology, and also it may speak to JD Vance being the Antichrist. Just kidding, but I did see the tweets and memes on that. It was like, did JD's aura unalive the Pope? And I'm just like, oh my God. And if any of you came to my 2024 election podcast or listened to it or came to the live taping, obviously there's a lot of stuff that went wrong. It didn't come through. I thought there was like no way Trump was going to win. I humbled, but I did talk about JD Vance just being so unlikable and that some stuff was going to catch up with him on that front. And he has definitely like done some weird stuff, but this was probably like takes the cake of just like internet meme, like fodder for all of us. So thank you, Pope Francis, for so much of your service, but also for just giving us that. So I want to talk about Pope Francis' birth chart because, again, I think it speaks to so many things we can learn from this chart and also this moment in time that we're in when he passed. So I'm going to share my screen here if you're watching on. So first thing, let's just talk about Pope's chart in general. Off the bat, this is the day he passed, April 21st, 2025 at 7:35 a.m. So if you're looking at here, like the outer wheel is the astrology, the transit, and the inner wheel is his actual birth chart. So we see here he has a sun in Sag. And I love this because Sag is the truth teller. Sag says whatever they want to say. And Sag is known for usually having higher ideals, and like Sag can be very associated with religion, philosophers, people who are into spirituality and finding higher ways of thinking and being an optimist and being a visionary. But Sag, I just think about Sag as that thing of like, I'm going to say what I need to say. And in terms of the Catholic Church, which there's a lot we could say about the Catholic Church, a lot they have not done right, a lot of probably, the course of history, this space for them. That being said, within that scope, and again, Pope Francis, not perfect. I don't agree with everything he said, but as a pope, he definitely had, as a Jesuit, some more progressive in terms of like social measures. He had a more progressive take. And again, not perfect, But some of the things that I thought were really sad that he shared, again, in ways that other popes haven't, is he was an advocate for the LGBTQ community. He was very critical of the MAGA agenda. He was definitely more like pro-Palestine. In a lot of his speeches and his talks and his sermons, what he preached in his 12-year time, he really, I think, was trying to bring in a little bit more of an open-mindedness, and I think a lot of people did not like that. And he actually even openly spoke out against JD Vance. I guess it was in February. He was rebuking the fact that like Trump and Vance were trying to use Christianity and twist actual like words of the Bible to fit and reframe like their treatment of refugees and migrants, kind of like hiding behind religion for some of these more harmful, nationalistic, authoritarian, um, you know, ideals or policy. And I think it's like a very cool thing that, like, for a leader, especially with this Sag energy in his chart, to be like, I don't believe in that, right? I don't believe in that. That is something that is definitely like I can't stay quiet during this, even though it did ruffle some feathers. And like I think about even here on this podcast, sometimes I'm like, ooh, I am saying stuff and people are not liking it. And I'll get, some messages from people, but that's a very small scale. If you're the leader of the Catholic Church, you are on a big stage. He has his North Node here next to his Sun. So that is like a sign that someone is here. If you have your Sun and your North Node together, especially in Sag, you are meant to like tell the truth, speak from the heart on a big way, in a big stage, and do some stuff that is gonna like probably ruffle some feathers or really like shift some dynamics around you, because it's a very highly like karmically charged placement in the chart here. So we have this Sun and North Node together. Now, let's look at some things in terms of, with his passing. The day that, oh my goodness, the day that he passed, you see here, we have Saturn and the North Node were conjunct. Saturn conjunct the North Node in Neptune is like, again, a karma switching, a big paradigm plot twist moment for all of us, especially if you have your North Node in Pisces. And Pisces can represent, again, beliefs, spirituality, and sort of like the flow of like the consciousness of society. And him passing on the day that Saturn was conjunct Neptune was very much like, wow, there's a shift happening. And Saturn can represent structures, tradition. And I think and I hope that this is like, a sign that we're moving somewhere differently, because after this, after Saturn and Pisces comes Saturn and Aries, we're in Neptune and Aries. I hope it's a little bit more of like going ahead, Aries energy, initiating into a new chapter, maybe for the Catholic Church, maybe for all of us in terms of like, what we kind of expect from our leaders, and like less about, this whole time that we're in right now, with so much corruption, with so much control, with so much like the powers that be versus the everyday people. We know this is on its last leg. That's just part of Pluto and Aquarius. And I feel like this Saturn Neptune moment is also a little bit of a call for like discernment, for moving forward, and for really thinking about like the spiritual leaders that we need in the world. And I mean spiritual, not having to do with a religion or, a certain sect of people, or like more about like our spiritual values, right? Like there's just things that we can look at, hopefully, and take off our identities and just be like, that is, I could say, objectively wrong, right? Like no children should be hungry, right? We should not be bombing churches and hospitals. No one should be accruing and hoarding so much wealth while people are struggling, working their ass off and can't afford, a roof over their head. These are just things that just doesn't make sense. And I'm just like, I don't know, I could be projecting my own beliefs onto this, but when I saw the Saturn Neptune conjunction happen, I was like, ooh, okay, wake up, everyone. We're going into a new chapter here. Another thing that stood out to me in the chart of the day of his passing was we have Mars in Leo opposite Pluto in Aquarius. So again, this tug of war between the Aquarian, we're moving forward as a people into a new direction, and that Mars in Leo of like the people who are, I would say, like elevated religious figures, celebrity. And I think for him, he was a champion of, I think, doing things from the heart, which feels very Leo. And so the other thing I want to talk about in, the Pope's chart, his personal Mars in Libra. Mars in Libra is like, you are going to fight and be an advocate for fairness, for justice. And we saw that a lot in his work. Again, really being an advocate for, people who are impoverished, people who are marginalized, immigrants, people who just didn't have as much of a voice. And we love that for him. But then also what's happening in the actual sky at the time of his passing, we have this Sun in Taurus, Mars in Leo, opposite Pluto in Aquarius. So this fixed square energy as we lead into, we talked about like last week, the new moon in Taurus. We talked about on last week's podcast that it was going to be a very spicy week, full of a lot of like power dynamics. And this is like, like an apex or a kind of disruption of some sort of a power dynamic shifting. And I think that we'll see how this plays out, but I think we could probably expect a new era of the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church beginning. And we might even have surprising or unconventional, maybe a new pope that's unconventional, or a surprising element to the conclave itself. And the fact that, like, Saturn, like I said, and Neptune are about to start a new era in Aries, might be a new head of the church, which is very, Aries, head, church, Neptune, might take new steps to like lead Christendom, Catholicism into a new era. I hope it remains to be unseen. I mean, remains to be seen, obviously, if it's like how this plays out, if it feels good or bad for us, but it just feels like some kind of era is shifting. And even within that square, of just looking at the opposition of Mars opposite in Leo, opposite Pluto in Aquarius, again, it's like this sort of challenging of the collective Pluto and Aquarius against this like one person, this sort of regal royal figure being in charge. And again, I think that he was a person deeply committed to finding a way forward, to reconciling the spiritual domain with what's spiritually relevant. And he definitely, I think, and I hope, imprinted on us a little bit of the possibility of what a leader could be like. And again, I'm not saying that he's perfect, and definitely within the Catholic Church as a whole, definitely not perfect, to think about and to reflect on. And of course, he also passed on an Aquarius moon day, and he is an Aquarius moon at just Cancer rising, Sag sun, Aquarius moon, just to go back to the basics of the big three, speaks so much to that, right? Cancer rising, having that like familial energy where you hope that, like I was saying before, that everyone is treated as family, that every child is your child, that we want to really advocate for each other as if we all were family. And, in the church, they might say like God's family. Aquarius moon, though, does make you more progressive, a little bit more outside the box, visionary. Aquarius moon is not going to beat to, march to the beat of someone else's drum. And again, that sad truth teller energy. And may we all like learn from this. And I hope it ushers in a positive new wave of leadership, not just in the Catholic Church, but beyond that. And like also, let's keep calling out people who are hiding behind religion, to cause harm to people. That's not cool. And on a personal note, I really do. The life wizard, my husband, his family is Catholic. My dad was raised Catholic, but we've gone on a lot of journeys spiritually as a family since then. But I actually did baptize my boys a few weeks ago, and it was really important for my husband and I to do it as a way to connect to our lineage, to connect to tradition. And, we baptized them Catholic, but by a really beautiful Jesuit priest here in New York City who is just has beautiful, more like socially liberal beliefs, good heart, who did a fantastic job. And again, we're also going to baptize them by the sea to connect them to the goddess this summer. But just throwing that out there because I think it's so easy to get so black and white with these things, like this good, this bad. But I think a lot of what we're being called to look at right now is like merging worlds, taking the best, what's the most aligned from both, and like making something new as we forge ahead and forge forward. And I think having things that connect us to the past and to our roots and to Cancer things in a positive way are very grounding. But we also need to be creative, need to put a little more energy into, again, seeing beyond what's right in front of us. So that's where I'm going to leave us for today. I peppered in a few predictions in here, but definitely, again, April 26th, when this Mars-Pluto opposition hits its peak, the last time that happened was Luigi Mangione times in December. So let's see, again, everyone stay safe, keep your wits about you during that time. A few of you asked me to pull up charts for different people. Pete Hegseth, after what happened with the second group chat, I'm just going to say his astrology does not look good. I don't know if he's going to last through May in his current position. And besides that, keep the insight coming, keep the ideas coming. Slide into my DMs, comment here on YouTube. Thank you for being patient. I'm learning how to do this with the sharing screen, going back and forth, but I'm so excited to be here. And so that is your star-powered scoop and cosmic tea for the week. If astrology isn't real, then honestly, frankly, I don't know what is. So let me know what you want to hear about on our next mini-sode, and I'll catch you next Friday. Do you love getting your Cosmic RX for the week here and want more? Make sure to sign up for our premium subscription so you can get exclusive access to bonus podcast episodes, all of my astrology info for the month ahead, and live new and full moon calls to help you manifest your dream life with an intentional international community of other cosmic baddies. Sign up through our link in show notes. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want to know more about Cosmic RX, head on over to thecosmicrx.com. And if you really love this show, I'd love it if you left a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. I super love hearing from you and reading your reviews. All right, you cosmic baddie, tune in next week. And until then, remember, love yourself fully, work your magic, and take no shit.